Kingston is home to artists who write, record, and perform many different styles of music, from radio-ready rock to punk, folk, country, blues, and even hip-hop and electronic music. You can find them all right here in Kingston. But they're not always represented equally, especially if you're into electronic styles like house, tribal, or ambient. In 2022, a group of post-secondary students decided they wanted to combine their love of electronic music with their desire to bring about positive change. Working with No.9 Gardens, an art and sustainability center just north of Kingston, they formed a committee and conceived a new type of festival to raise funds for No.9's Climate Action Initiative. Over 2 days in September of 2022, the committee hosted the very first Cloud9 Electronic Music and Eco Art Festival, featuring works of art and live electronic music performances from artists across North America. In this episode of the Kingston Live podcast, we chat with Reily, Morrison, and Rupert Davies of the Cloud9 Youth Committee to hear about what's in store for the second edition of the festival, set to take place at No.9 Gardens September 8th to 10th.
And it's got this music scene that we just felt in our bones was we were gonna click with, and we did.
Wow, man, that was amazing. Like, where are you from? Like, Kingston. And they're like, but where are you from?
Nice. All right. Well, I think we can just kind of jump right into it. Reily, Morrison, and Rupert Davies of the Cloud9 Festival of Electronic Music and Eco Art. Welcome to the Kingston Live podcast.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks for having us.
It's summertime here in southeastern Ontario. There's lots of festivals, and music festivals especially, that take place in and around the greater Kingston area this time of year, but none that marry the multiple experiential aspects quite like Cloud9 does. And while the name of the festival, Cloud9 Festival of Electronic Music and Eco Art, is fairly descriptive, tell us, what's the festival really all about?
So Cloud9, first and foremost, is an event to raise money and awareness for No.9 Contemporary Art in the Environment, which is a climate action charity, and they run a number of other programs. One is IMSC, which is a program for elementary schools run by No.9's team of architects and artists, and they go into schools and show kids how to use art and design to address environmental issues and build sustainable communities and sustainable cities. And then there's also Public Art for Change, which is a program to empower a diverse range of artists to create public art. And then there's No.9 Gardens, which is an actual hands-on facility in Rideau Lakes, which doubles as the venue for Cloud9. And it's a hands-on facility where people can come and partake in different events, different workshops all around sustainable living. There's gardens there for farm-to-table cooking. They have a commercial kitchen where a lot of the cooking of that food happens. And then there's also yurts and glamping tents on site for people to come and just kind of partake and immerse themselves in sustainable living. And so Cloud9 is basically this aim to promote climate action through music and art and community. And all of us who started it were just really passionate about how music and art can combine to address social and environmental issues.
I want to ask, Reily, this is not the first time we've spoken. We spoke last year, and I remember asking you where the idea for the Cloud9 Festival came about. And I think you gave me a very good, possibly politically correct and detailed answer. But how did it really start? What's the real story behind how it came together? Maybe the one you might tell off the record, even though we're on the record here on the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one summer, we were all, myself, Rupert, Rupert's sister, Hannah, and then the other co-founder, Emily. We were all connected to No.9 Gardens in a different way. So Emily and I were actually interns that summer, and I was living on the property. And then Hannah and Rupert are the son and daughter of the owners of No.9. So we all got really, really close that summer. And just one night we were on the grounds having a bonfire, a couple drinks in us. And we were just kind of sitting around in awe of this like space, and Rupert having a background in electronic music and I have a lot of interest in electronic music, we instantly started talking about like what an electronic music festival would look like and how cool it would be. And there's also existing art pieces on site. There's a permanent installation at No.9. So I think we were really inspired by that and what it would look like to have like a large scale festival that combines both music and art, because No.9 has a really like rich history of the arts. So yeah, that just kind of started out as like this crazy dream that seemed kind of unattainable when we were talking about it, after a few cottage springs. But then we just, after that, we kept talking about it. And then we started to get really serious about it and started to meet, the four of us, every week. And we started a Google Drive and we were just kind of spitballing ideas of like what this would be. And suddenly we realized, damn, we need more people. This is going to be like, we had really big dreams and we really wanted to achieve them all. And yeah, it's just been amazing to watch it grow since that like crazy July evening.
I've had lots of wild nights around campfires and stuff like that where we spitball crazy ideas like that. I've never actioned any of them the way that you have. So it's very impressive how you move from an idea to something that you're going into the second edition of the Cloud9 Festival here. And Reily, I want to know, what role did you end up playing at the festival? And it's a real legit thing. It's not an idea you're talking about around a campfire. What role did you kind of find yourself falling into as it relates to the festival?
I guess and last year we all kind of just had to do what needed to be done. So it was hard kind of drawing a hard line between what roles were. So I had my toe in, I think, like almost everything that happened and needed to happen. This year we've kind of had more of a team, so we're able to kind of set roles a little bit better. But I ended up finding myself as the co-director of a music festival, which I never thought would happen at 22 years old. But the actual day of the festival, I was the stage manager, which was crazy because I have no experience doing that. So I think the day of was like probably the most stressful day of my entire life, but it was also the most rewarding day. And I'm really looking forward to that again this year.
Well, I know that you mentioned there is a team. There's lots more besides yourself. And Rupert Davies, who's joined us on the call here today, joined us on the podcast from Brooklyn. Actually, he's joined us from. But Rupert, what's your role at the festival? How did you end up getting involved?
So I, like Reily mentioned earlier, I'm just really fascinated by all things electronic music, have been pretty much since maybe 12 or 13. I was just interested by how, creative people could get with it. There's like infinite possibilities of sounds that you can create and ways to put those sounds together. So that naturally led me down this path of being into electronic production. I attended Berklee School of Music in Boston, which I just recently graduated from, majoring in electronic production. So there was that side of me, but there's also, all the amazing work that my parents are doing with their nonprofit. And I like to think they did a good job of raising me to think, what is some purpose that I can have in life that's beyond myself, and definitely teaching how to give back. And I think that's something that is really important. So these last couple of years, I've spent a lot of time figuring out how to merge my creative interests with possible climate solutions and just ways in which I can help make an impact. And when Reily and I and Emily and my sister Hannah, we were all by the fire, this idea came very naturally to us. And so I made the executive decision that it would be an electronic music festival. And I know that's not, the first genre that people think about when they hear, this festival that's all about promoting sustainable lifestyles and building sustainable communities. But, there's lots I can touch on. First and foremost, it's been, throughout history, it's been a genre that has led to a lot of radical and cultural shifts. You can see, just where I'm situated now, Brooklyn, New York. New York was a hub for electronic music. And it was just all about promoting this space that was free from discrimination, where people could come and just feel totally vulnerable with self-expression and just let everything come out. And I thought that was beautiful. So all of this is to say that I'm really excited that this festival is showcasing electronic music, and it's kind of my job to be the music lead and the talent manager. So I personally think I have the most fun job. I get to interact a lot with the artists, hear their stories, and just like support them. It's very purposeful for me.
Yeah, and, it's interesting. When we started the Kingston Live podcast, what we discovered was such a diversity of music in the area. And I want to get back to something that you said, because you'd made the decision, Rupert, that it was going to be an electronic music festival, which is interesting because that's a style of music that Kingston, the greater Kingston area, isn't really known for. So how did you feel about that? Did you worry that you'd be challenged to, create a festival based on electronic music that would be able to draw people to that festival based on that style of music?
Yeah, there's definitely some slight concern when I was initially kind of thinking about it. And it took a little bit of convincing with some other people involved. But ultimately, I think they saw my vision clear, and they knew that, I was always thinking about how to connect these two things together. That's like a day-to-day thing. And yeah, I also just knew of a bunch of Canadian acts that I wanted to support last year. And I also thought, maybe new is good, and Kingston would kind of revel in this new opportunity to maybe explore a side of music that wasn't initially offered as much. So for that, I was excited.
Well, you're going into the second year now, and Reily, we never got a chance to catch up after year one. I know you went traveling after that, but give me your take. Like, how awesome was the first one? It must have been awesome considering that you're doing it again.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind. It was so successful. Like, before it ended the day of, we were like, we gotta do this again. Like, this is just honestly like the best day of my life. Just looking back and reminiscing on how many people came out. We had a lot of friends and family who came to support, but there's also a lot of people who just came because of our promotions we did in Kingston or things they heard online. And that's just like continues to build as we get more established and reach more people. And we put out surveys like after the fact to kind of course, this is the first year festival. We know there's a lot to improve on, and we wanted to get people's take on what exactly there was to improve, since we were all running around. We wanted to hear from people themselves. And I think overwhelmingly, everyone was like, the best part of the festival was the community and the people we met. And so many people just met strangers that they'd never met before. And I think what's really great about Cloud9 and this niche we've sort of created or tapped into is that this community of like-minded people who are all coming out, a lot of young people who feel the effects of environmental disaster and just want to kind of be around other people who give them hope and inspiration. And what I love now is that we've kind of established this foundation. Like, we know what it takes to run a music festival. Now we just get to become more creative as we grow, and our entire team is volunteer-based, but the fact that we've been able to grow and so many people who helped out last year are continuing to help out, I think is a testament to how special and how genuine our intentions are. And I just want everyone who comes to Cloud9 to really feel that.
Yeah, if I could jump in, what Reily was talking about, this sense of community and that feedback that we got, reminded me of, there was someone that went to Cloud9 from Boston. He just drove with some other friends that I had invited, and we didn't know each other, but it's funny, since then we've become best friends. He was talking to me about his experience, and it was kind of a highlight for me. He said, Cloud9 is the type of space and festival environment where you could just walk up to anyone and feel utterly comfortable, like being your genuine self. Like, everyone is just so there for very positive reasons. That's something that I'm very proud of to say, because we want these communities to feel safe and feel inclusive and drive creative thought and things like that. So
to touch on Rupert's story too, I have a crazy story about Cloud9. So someone who also drove up from Boston with, I think, maybe the same people you're talking about, Rupert, but is originally from Europe. I met at the festival like briefly. Anyways, when I was traveling, and like I mentioned, Rob, after the festival, he saw that I was in Europe and we got together, and he's also a musician in Europe. And it's just so crazy how like meeting someone for like 1 minute at a festival, and now I feel really close to them, and you know, they want to come out and support. Like I know people just looking at the ticket tailor and like seeing where people are coming from, like there's so much support from the States, like a lot of people driving or flying from like Boston, New York, even California, Vancouver. Like it's so crazy to see the support, and yeah, I just love it.
It's, you know, a couple of episodes ago, we had the privilege of sitting down with the organizers behind the Blue Skies Music Festival, which takes place north of Kingston and has every year for the past 50 years. And in fact, this will be its 50th year this August. Now, it's a folk festival, not an electronic music festival, but highly sustainable as well. It's interesting. There's... Give it a listen. I think you'd be interested in one of the things that they succeeded in, though, similarly, is creating community. And I think that they attribute the longevity of the Blue Skies Music Festival to community. And it sounds like you've really succeeded or tapping into community as well. And so I know this is year 2 for you, but who knows? If we're still around in 50 years, maybe you can tell us the 50-year story of Cloud9. But I want to go back to something because it's interesting. You've described the festival as a multi-sensory celebration of a sustainable future. And I think some people look to the future, as you'd mentioned, Reily, before. I think they just see little reason to celebrate. It's doom and gloom, and there's not much, positivity to look forward to, at least not in terms of what's happening to our climate and the environment. But there's certainly an optimism behind the Cloud9 Festival. And so I just wanted to know, how are you celebrating the sustainable future with Cloud9?
I think there's definitely a lot of climate anxiety in our generation, and that's a driving factor to everything we're doing with Cloud9. But we're seeing that the current narrative around sustainability is not so conducive for motivating our generation. If you look at just basic science, we've learned that people are a lot more motivated by present reward than they are from the risk of a future punishment. And so what we saw is there's definitely an opportunity here to kind of reshape or shift the narrative a bit so that people can actually feel motivated and inspired and that they're making an impact. So instead of urging people to consume less and give up things that they normally enjoy, we're just trying to present this glimpse into what a sustainable future might look like. And our narrative is all about replacing unsustainable sources of pleasure with sustainable ones. And we've all experienced this, things like being with people you love, laughing, dancing, enjoying music on a really nice day outside. All of the things that are so foundational to what makes Cloud9, it's for this reason, to show that it's not so much that we're urging people to have less in their life. It's actually we're introducing more for them. So yeah, it's just like a new look into it and a more positive and motivating outlook of sustainable living.
And that was also part of the motivation. I mean, there was a number of motivations to expand this to a 3-day festival, but since community is such a big part of it, we wanted to expand this to 3 days so that more people can come and spend more time with one another and be more intentional. And, we're going to have workshops this year. We're going to have a collaborative art piece. So I think that's really great that we're getting people to actually participate in art themselves. Of course, there's the eco art exhibit that they can walk around and see it. But I think what's so inspirational and one of a kind about our festival is that people get to partake in that now and actually do the stuff that we're talking about.
It's killing me. killing me. It's killing me. It's killing me. It's what you need. It's killing me. It's killing me. It's killing me. It's killing me.
Thank you for listening to Kingston Live. Be sure to subscribe on your platform of choice and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. For more great Kingston music, check out the Kingston Live playlist on Spotify. For show listings, artist info, and all things Kingston music, check out kingstonlive.ca.
You know, the backdrop or the location for the Cloud9 Festival is very unique and is, I think, an element, a very essential element of the experience that you've put together. It's a non-traditional venue, No.9 Gardens, just north of Kingston, Rideau Lakes, Lyndhurst area. But I'm wondering if you can maybe tell our listeners about the venue and its uniqueness and why it's such a significant backdrop and an environment for the kind of experience you're trying to create.
Yeah, so the venue is, you know, one of our biggest assets. I think for anyone trying to organize a music festival, the thing that is probably something to consider is where is it being held? And we're just so fortunate to have No.9 Gardens as our venue, because that in itself, just being there, you know, without all the components of the music festival is very magical. And it's what led to this whole thing. As Reily was touching on earlier, it was a campfire at No.9 Gardens that created the idea, the seed that turned into Cloud9. So it's just a very wonderful place. There's forest trails to discover. A lot of the neighboring area has been donated to conserving the land, so it's for public use. We have a number of fields on the gardens property, so lots of room and space for people to wander and just explore. And then, yeah, there's this really beautiful river system that kind of flows throughout. So it's a beautiful place. And we really wanted to share that with other people our age, especially in this world that's growing more and more online. It's important to provide access to nature to people in our generation and just make sure that they understand how valuable that is.
No.9 Gardens is a facility that's open year-round. I think there was or is a Queens connection there, and they provide programming all year, camping trails, some of the things that you mentioned there. The Cloud9 Festival, your reason for being is No.9 Gardens because you are a fundraiser, right? And so I'm wondering if you can explain that connection and the reason, the work that No.9 Gardens is doing, or the work that's being done at No.9 Gardens, and why you feel that that's such important work as to go to the extent of organizing a 3-day festival to raise money to support the work that they're doing there.
I think a personal anecdote that I think speaks to why No.9 Gardens is so important to me is that the way I came to know No.9 was during my 4th year of university. I was studying at Queen's University in global development, and I started volunteering at No.9. And I'd worked at other farms or other organic gardens before, but none of them touched on the social and the cultural and the environmental in a way that No.9 does. And I think that really just inspires people and inspires creativity. Like, I'd never been introduced to art in that way, and I think that there's so much to talk about in terms of the negatives, but when it comes back to art, I think that's one thing that people can kind of tap into to create these positive spaces that we can look into for having and creating a sustainable future. So I think that's what really inspired me about No.9 and something that I want to share with other people. So last year we were just trying to get our feet on the ground and make sure everything ran smoothly. But this year, now that we have some more people on our team and we have more bandwidth to kind of run with, we want to make sure that people understand what this festival is about. And it is about No.9, and it's about community, and it's about supporting climate action.
So let's talk about the team for a second, and I want to talk about eco art as well. But let's talk about the team for a second, because your website explains that the entire festival has been organized by youth for youth. And so beyond yourself, Reily, and you, Rupert, tell us about some of the others who've worked so hard to organize the Cloud9 Festival.
We have to give a big shout out, of course, and we have already mentioned in this podcast, Emily Pope and Hannah Davies, who are our co-founders. One of our biggest strengths is our team, and without whom none of this would be possible. Our team has grown a lot this year. This year, we've been really thankful for Constantine being added to our team, who's the marketing strategist. He works alongside Charlotte, who has been there from the start with us. She does like the graphic design, a lot of the marketing work, and she has been incredibly foundational to giving our brand a visual identity and an online presence. So we're so indebted to her for that. There's also Autumn, who has a civil engineering background. She's also been one of the people who's been with us from the start. She's so useful in helping us get like permits and making site maps. We've had a new addition, Soren, this year, who's our sustainability lead, and he has a ton of connections in Kingston that have helped us get like composting services, also a solar trailer. So he's been really helpful in that aspect. It's also Maurice, who's our logistics manager. And even I think one of the most incredible stories that I've seen is like last year we had a vendor market, and one of the vendors was Patty's Gals, which is run by Shannon and her sister. And they were really inspired by Cloud9 and reached out to us after the fact of actually being part of organizing it. So now Shannon is like the vendor manager, and she knows a lot about sustainable vendors, which is really great. I could go on and mention all the other people in our team, but there's just too many to name. And that's so awesome that we've come from 4 people to having like such an amazing team of like, I think we're at like 20 people now or something. It's awesome. And the fact that this is all volunteer run, it's so like amazing just to see how all these individuals volunteer their time to make this happen. And like, we are such an international team. Like, we're from all over. We have Constantine's in Australia right now. Like, Rome is in Vancouver. We have people in Boston, New York. It's crazy. Last year, the day of the festival was like the first day I'd met a lot of people in person, which was crazy. But that's the like beauty of our virtual world now. And like, I think, you know, COVID was a big factor in why we started Cloud9, but it's really, I don't think we could have accomplished this without COVID and how that created this like digital virtual Zoom world we're all so used to living in now.
Yeah, it sort of set the stage for this coming togetherness that you've worked so hard to create. I think it's such an amazing accomplishment considering your age and what you've been able to achieve in a single year. Now going into year 2 of the festival here. At the risk of sounding old, I have 2 children. I can't get them to agree on anything. But you've mobilized a team of maybe 20 or more people across multiple continents here to make this amazing festival happen. And I know that the Cloud9 Festival encompasses music, there's food, there's drink, there's the eco art part. But can you tell our listeners about the experience that the group is really working hard to create for the Cloud9 Festival? Like, if you were to paint us a picture, what experience can our listeners expect to, see, hear, touch, or taste as a festival attendee for Cloud9?
So like I mentioned, we are now expanding to a 3-day festival. Last year it was just a 1-day, but we were like, that's not enough, Cloud9, we need more. So now it's 3 days, with Saturday, September 9th, being a full day of live music and workshops. But the Friday night, there will be a community meal made for anyone who comes and camps, and it's all made fresh from ingredients from the garden, which is so amazing and purposeful. And then we're thinking about having some film screenings from like local artists that day. And then there'll just be like general activities. People can kind of settle in. There'll be bar service. Then whoever decides to camp Friday night will wake up to the beautiful sounds of nature and get to partake in all the activities we have planned for the next day. And then we also have like a general admission ticket so people could just come for the Saturday. So there'll be a vendor market where we're going to have a lot of sustainable and local artists and small businesses come out. Also going to have the food, same as last year with Miss Bao returning. They're a highlight. A lot of people really love to have them, and some other local food vendors. There'll be screen printing merch on site so people can come and actually screen print their own merch to take home, which is a much more sustainable way of doing it, like asking people to bring their own old shirts and stuff as opposed to us producing and shipping it to people. And then, of course, there'll be the musicians.
Well, one thing I want to know is, heading into year 2 now, what is there anything that you've learned from the first festival that has caused you to adapt the way that you're doing this year? I know that you mentioned that you've expanded to 3 days, and I love what you're doing with the extra day here. This is it sounds amazing, the experience that you're creating. But are there ways that you've approached things differently, like say the music or the art or the food or any of the other experiential aspects of the festival based on the things that you learned last year?
I think, like I've kind of mentioned, what's great is that now that we've set a foundation, we have space to get creative, which is awesome. So another thing is that, like, with adding the 2 other days, we're a little bit more intentional in our efforts of marketing so that we're targeting more people from Montreal and Toronto. And I think a barrier last year was that where do they stay if they want to come from out of town? That week is also very busy for like Frosh Week. A lot of the hotels are booked up. People our age also, they don't really want to spend money on like a hotel or an Airbnb. It's just another barrier to coming. And we want to like reduce barriers for people to come. And also just being able to like actually camp on site allows them to really understand and immerse themselves in what No.9 is and what it has to offer. I think also this year is really great is we've established our own brand a lot, which is great. Like, of course, we have the advantage of being associated and kind of building off of No.9's existing brand. But what's really cool to see, and like I said, Charlotte has been so instrumental in achieving this, is like creating our own brand within a brand, because we are, of course, tied to No.9, but we're also so different in so many ways. And we also like target a different audience than the rest of No.9's work does, which is like, young professionals, people, our whole team, and the people that we kind of are targeting to come out are between like 19 and 30, I guess, people within the age group of the volunteers.
I have something to touch on about the whole branding side of things. I think having an established brand at this point has helped drastically in our efforts of receiving sponsorship and partners that also are so foundational to making this happen. Because
tell us about some of those partners.
Yeah, so we have the Ontario Cultural Attractions Fund, RTO9, Township of Redo Lakes. So there's some really close support there. Wake Water is a really cool company. They do caffeinated water beverages. Raymond James, and then Exclaim Media. So Exclaim was doing a lot of our promotion for the music side of things. And it's definitely, a dream of mine to see what we started, being promoted by these major music publications. And then Resident Advisor, they're not a partner, but they did a similar thing to Exclaim, advertising and getting the word out. So having 1 year under our belt helped a lot, and it's only going to keep improving our ability to find like-minded organization who want to support.
Mm-hmm. Another really important partner that I'd like to recognize is the Agnes. So we can kind of go into the eco art realm now, but the eco art exhibition is co-presented by the Agnes Etherington Art Center and No.9, which is such a great accomplishment to me. I know I've been going to the Agnes since I was in first year, and so it's so amazing. It feels like such an accomplishment under our belt to be partnering with them. So this year they are curating, Sunny Kerr, the curator of contemporary art at the Agnes, is curating the exhibition, which is titled With the Land. So similar to last year, there'll be works kind of populated all around No.9 Gardens outdoor trails, the riverbank, these beautiful wildflower fields. And it is very integral to the Cloud9 Festival. So that's also part of what attendees will be able to see when they come to Cloud9 and immerse themselves in. But it is also separate to Cloud9. So it will be starting, there'll be a launch July 29th at No.9 Gardens. And then there'll be it'll be free to the public every weekend from that week until the end of October. So it coincides with Cloud9. And another thing, the project is funded by our TO9 partnership grant, the Canada Council for the Arts, and the City of Kingston Arts Fund. So we're very grateful for that.
We partnered with Muse, who's a creative magazine at Queen's. And I think that was when I first was like fully immersed in the art, because we did like a mini photo shoot to promote. And so a lot of, the inspiration was to just get in the scene of the showcase the artwork. And I think it's a really amazing component of the festival, and it really helps to set the scene. So some notable artists last year, all very professional artists coming from around Canada. There was Shane Dark from Toronto. He specializes in, he sources these wood stripped trees and long pieces of wood, probably about 25 feet long, and then he roots them in the ground so they're kind of all piercing the sky, and then he paints them this really prominent blue, royal blue, I'm guessing.
It was very striking to see that. I remember that was a very striking sculpture. The eco art though that you're describing, I mean, these aren't paintings that are hanging on a wall or a gallery. These are almost of the landscape, but they're part of the environment and part of the festival experience. And anyway, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, and there's a lot of consideration put into where the artwork is placed too, and that's another exciting thing about eco art is it's the entire environment in which it sits in, how it drives that experience. So you're walking around and then you approach, this big tree, and hanging from the tree is another installation.
And there was Sean Martindale's piece Where It's At, which was at an actual giant at sign. So people could actually walk through the at sign. We have some really great aerial view shots that are on the website and on our Instagram, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But I just thought that was really cool and speaks to how immersive it is. And then what's also really cool is because all of these eco art installations, eco art means that they're made from natural materials. They can go back, they can be composted back into the earth basically. And so I thought it was really cool. I was stayed on the farm into October, and I got to watch all of these pieces kind of degrade and just go back to nature, which was so cool. There was one piece which was a little nest that was a bunch of twigs and stuff that had gone, it was hanging from a tree. And as you could watch as it went from summertime, all these really bright yellows and bright greens, and then as we got towards fall, they all started turning brown and red, which I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, what a cool aspect the eco art installations add to the Cloud9 festival experience, and not to overshadow the art, but the electronic music acts that you've assembled for this year's Cloud9 festival are nothing short of impressive. What are some of the highlights of this year's musical lineup?
There's a lot of highlights, but one of the bigger ones is the headline set. That's going to be by Sterling Grove, which are two people, and Ellen Woods is an amazingly talented vocalist. And this year we decided to only do DJs. It helps a lot logistically, but we thought that, curating that would be very interesting for people to experience. But at the end, there's that one exception where Ellen Woods is going to be singing, accompanying the DJ set. That was actually something that the artists themselves brought forward, that idea. And I just love that, they're equally invested in creating this experience for attendees. So yeah, that's something I'm really excited for. That keeps people wanting to stay till the end. And then the other one is just another highlight is how diverse the acts are. And throughout the day, I'm just very confident that there's going to be a performance that everyone's going to enjoy. There's going to be so many favorite moments.
Are there any acts returning to Cloud9 for year 2 that performed at year 1?
Yeah, so there is one act. His name's Alon Sikorsky. He will be coming from Boston, and he's doing a completely final set this year, which is very impressive, even from like someone that's familiar with the art of DJing. So he starts the day on September 9th, and then ceremonies follows. She's from Toronto. She's done a Boiler Room set, which certain listeners are going to recognize. And I highly recommend these names that I'm going to say. Definitely check them out beforehand. But there's ceremonies, Koreatown Acid, Pascal Project, who I actually just saw in Brooklyn, and Bale, Luke Mann, CL, and then, as I mentioned before, Sterling Grove and Ellen Woods.
Reily, what are some of the highlights from the musical acts that you're looking forward to this year?
I'm really excited. I saw Pascal Project play at Boiler Room and Picnic 2 years ago or last year. Anyways, as soon as I heard her sound, I was like, I really want her to play at Cloud9. I think it would be perfect. At the time, we'd already had our lineup set up, but I've just been like a fangirl of hers for so long. And so to actually get to like, Rupert and I did all the pitches to the artists. And I think that was really, cool getting to connect with them. And so when she agreed, I was very happy, and I'm super happy to see her set too. And a lot of the artists have played at very reputable venues. A lot of them have played Boiler Room, New Tech, Picnic. I think they're all going to bring a really, really cool and unique sound, like Rupert said. So that's awesome. I love that we have a lot of female representation in the lineup. That's something that we were intentional about, and it's great to see that come to life.
It truly is a multi-sensory festival, the way that you're describing it. There's music, there's visual art, there's, there's the light and the sound. It's completely immersive. I wanted to ask, though, like, dancing is an important part of electronic music culture. Tell us about the environment in which the musical performances take place.
Yeah, so we have an organization that we work with called Abso Live, and they have this giant trailer truck that actually unfolds into this, 40-foot stage. It's quite cool to witness. And so that's kind of where it allows us to bring the trailer actually out into the middle of the field. And we have the whole thing outside. It's rain or shine, like many festivals are, but last year we had a really beautiful weekend, and we're hoping for another one this year. And a new addition is actually, we're working with the Toronto Metropolitan University, and their architecture students have been doing a creative build out of a shading canopy, which is going to be in front of the stage. It's going to provide a lot of shade and just like really amplify the whole experience, because it's like you have the experience, the immersion from in front of you, and then you have it, above you and all around. And that's really exciting. But I love going to outdoor shows. It's in my opinion, so much more immersive and just like open. And I think a lot of people will have an amazing time dancing in the field.
Mm-hmm. A lot of my friends last year, they were doing the eco art exhibit through the outdoor trails, and they kind of align with the riverbank. And so my friends were saying that they just sat on the riverbank and they could still hear the music while they're like looking at the river and looking at art, which I think it can't get better than that.
Real quick, where can our listeners find out information about tickets, transportation, camping, everything? Run it down for us here.
Yes, so we have a brand new website that you can find at no.9.ca/cloud-9-festival. It's a long one.
We'll make sure that that's in the links for the show notes as well. So,
and you can also find information on our Instagram, cloud9.festival. I recommend subscribing to our newsletter via our website to stay updated on information. And I would also just like to plug our Facebook event. We are trying to organize like carpooling through our Facebook group so that people can be more sustainable and come into the festival.
Awesome. Well, Reily, Morrison, and Rupert Davies of the Cloud9 Festival of Electronic Music and Eco Art, thanks so much for being my guest today on the Kingston Live podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
It was really fun. Thanks for having us.
This has been Kingston Live. We encourage you to rate us on your listening platform of choice and subscribe where possible. For show listings, artist info, and all things Kingston music, check out kingstonlive.ca. Kingston Live was produced in Kingston by Soundwise. Hosted by Rob Howard. Voiceovers and technical production by John Sanfilippo. Kingston Live is a member of the Canadian Live Music Association. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@kingstonlive.ca.